The twin suns of Aurora Prime sank slowly behind jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the colony. The wind swept across the barren plains, carrying fine red dust that sparkled like tiny rubies in the sunlight. At the edge of the settlement, Cale Arden stood tall, his hands gripping the railing of a metal platform overlooking the horizon. His mind was restless, though his body remained still. He had always loved this view, the endless plains, the mountains in the distance, and the feeling that anything was possible under the wide, open sky. But today, the horizon held something darker. Far above, in the blackness of space, sensors on the colony's towers had picked up strange signals. Rumors whispered among the settlers hinted at the Vexari Empire, a ruthless alien force that had been conquering human colonies for years. For Cale, the warnings were personal. The Vexari did not just threaten lives, they threatened everything humans had built. Cale had grown up on Aurora Prime, learning to pilot ships before he even learned to run. He was fast, clever, and brave, qualities that made him one of the colony's best defenders. Yet for all his skills, his thoughts always drifted to one person, Lyra Solon. She was an engineer, brilliant and kind, with eyes that reflected the twin suns, and a mind that could solve any problem. Cale had loved her quietly for years, and she had always returned his affection with a gentle friendship. But in the shadows of war, Cale knew he might never have a chance to tell her how much she meant to him. The alarm blared suddenly, cutting through the calm evening. Red lights flashed across the colony's towers. Cale's stomach tightened as he sprinted toward the central command hall. The townspeople were already moving, their faces etched with fear and determination. Aurora Prime was small, but its people were tough. They had survived storms, rock slides, and alien wildlife that prowled the plains, yet none of them had faced a threat like the Vexari. In the command hall, Governor Dalen stood at the head of a large table, holographic maps floating above it. Ships marked in blue represented Aurora Prime's defenses, but the blips in red, hundreds of them, indicated Vexari warships moving rapidly toward the colony. "They're coming faster than we expected," Governor Dalen said, his voice tight. "Our scouts barely had time to detect them. We have days, maybe hours, before they reach us." Kyle felt his heart race. The colony had no chance against a fleet that size unless they had skilled pilots. He straightened, pushing fear aside. "I'll fight," he said. "Send me with the fleet." Governor Dalen looked at him with a mixture of respect and concern. "Kyle, this is no training exercise. You'll face enemies who don't understand mercy. Many will die." Cale's jaw set. "I understand the risk. But if we don't fight, Aurora Prime will fall." Lyra stepped forward then, her hands gripping the table. "Kyle, you don't have to do this," she said softly. Her voice trembled, betraying her worry. I don't want you to go. I need you here." Kyle turned to face her, taking her hand gently. "Lyra, I can't stay. Not when the colony needs me. I'll come back. I promise. Just wait for me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I'll wait. But don't get yourself killed." The following hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Kyle packed his gear, checked his ship, and said hurried goodbyes to his family and friends. The townspeople lined the spaceport, murmuring words of encouragement and hope. Cale felt their eyes on him, trusting, believing that one human could make a difference against an empire. When he boarded his fighter, the hum of the engines filled the cockpit. He took a deep breath, glancing one last time at the planet below. Aurora Prime stretched wide and open, the mountains casting long shadows in the fading sunlight. Somewhere down there, Lyra was watching him leave. Somewhere down there, a life he loved waited. The stars outside the viewport shimmered as the ship launched, slipping into the darkness of space. Cale's hands moved instinctively over the controls. Years of training had honed him into a precise, confident pilot, but his mind was still racing with thoughts of Lyra. He shook them off. There was no time for hesitation. The Vexari were out there, and every second counted. As he joined the Terran Defense Fleet, Kyle saw ships of all shapes and sizes moving in formation. Humans were outnumbered, but humans had always relied on creativity, courage, and cleverness to survive. He remembered the stories of old Earth pilots who had outmaneuvered far stronger opponents, and a spark of determination ignited within him. The fleet moved toward the Vexari signal, their engines glowing like a ribbon of silver against the void. Cale's fighter hummed with energy as he checked his systems. The Vexari had never faced humans like this before, humans who would fight not for glory but for their home. for their families, for love. Hours passed as they approached the enemy. The red blips on the map grew larger, each one a potential threat. Cale's heart pounded. He could see their ships now, sleek and terrifying, with armor that gleamed even in the dim light of distant stars. Yet there was something about their rigid formation that gave him hope. Humans didn't rely on brute force alone. Humans adapted. Humans survived. The first shots rang out like thunder. Lasers streaked through the void, ships weaving and diving in complex patterns. Cale's fighter darted between the beams, firing back with precise shots. Explosions lit up the darkness, and the smell of burning metal filled the air, even in the vacuum. He thought of Aurora Prime, of Lyra, of the people who had entrusted their lives to him. He couldn't fail, not now, not ever. Hours turned into a chaotic dance of attack and counterattack. Cale and his fellow pilots used every trick they had learned. Feints, ambushes, and daring maneuvers that caught the Vexari off guard. Humans were outnumbered, but they were not outmatched. The Vexari underestimated what the human spirit could do when driven by love and loyalty. By the end of the battle, the Vexari retreated, leaving only smoldering wrecks in their wake. Cale's body ached, and his hands were blistered from gripping the controls, but his heart swelled with triumph. Aurora Prime was safe for now. As he floated above the battlefield, Cale allowed himself a brief moment of thought for Lyra. He knew the war was far from over, and that leaving her behind weighed on him like a stone in his chest. But he also knew something deeper. Humans could endure. Humans could fight. Humans could love. And that love gave them strength that no empire could destroy. Cale looked at the stars, the endless expanse of the galaxy stretching before him. There would be more battles, more dangers, and more sacrifices. But Cale Arden, human among humans, was ready. For Aurora Prime, for Lyra, for humanity. And somewhere in the quiet of his ship, he whispered to the stars, "I'll come back for you, Lyra, no matter what it takes." The victory over the first wave of Vexari ships had been hard won, but it was only the beginning. The Terran Defense Fleet, a coalition of humans from various colonies, was on high alert. Every pilot knew that the Vexari were cunning and relentless, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as humans prepared for the next strike. Inside the cockpit, Cale reviewed his maps and mission briefings. Intelligence reports suggested that the Vexari were building a new weapon, something capable of obliterating entire colonies in a single strike. The thought made his chest tighten. Aurora Prime was just one of countless worlds under threat, but Cale's mind always returned to the home he loved. To him, every colony represented families, friends, and lives that were worth protecting, no matter the cost. During long flights between patrols, Cale often thought of Lyra. He imagined her in her workshop, tinkering with machines, her brow furrowed in concentration, a small smile on her lips whenever she succeeded. The memory made him both ache and fight harder. War could strip away everything, but it could not erase the bond he felt with her. The fleet made its way to a sector near the Vexari outer rim, a dangerous and mostly uncharted region of space. The sector was filled with asteroid fields and debris from past battles, making navigation tricky. But humans thrived on challenges. Cale watched as pilots maneuvered their ships through tight corridors, dodging asteroids and enemy mines. The Vexari often used these areas to ambush opponents, but Cale and his squad had trained for months to anticipate every move. It was during one such patrol that Cale first saw the cunning of the Vexari up close. A small fleet of their scouts emerged from behind a massive asteroid, firing energy beams that sliced through the void. Human ships darted and dodged, firing back with coordinated precision. Cale's heart raced as he piloted his fighter, weaving through laser fire while keeping an eye on his squad mates. The battle was intense, but the humans' ingenuity turned the tide. Cale noticed that the Vexari ships had a blind spot near their engines. Using a risky maneuver, he looped his fighter around a large asteroid and fired a concentrated burst of plasma into the vulnerable engines of 3 enemy ships. They exploded in a chain reaction, leaving the remaining Vexari stunned. "Nice work, Arden," his wingman, Rena Talos, called over the comms. "You just bought the fleet some breathing room." Kyle allowed himself a brief smile before responding, "Humans adapt. We survive. Let's finish this sweep and get home in one piece." That evening, Cale docked at the fleet's mobile station, a massive ship orbiting a neutral moon. Inside the station, pilots and crew moved with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The human spirit shone here, not in grand speeches but in small acts of kubi. The Vexari stronghold loomed like a shadow in the void, massive and unyielding, its dark spires cutting across the stars. Kyle's fighter drifted near the edge of the asteroid belt that surrounded it. The maps showed a maze of orbital defenses, energy fields, and patrol drones. Any mistake could be fatal, yet Kale's resolve was unshakable. Humans had faced impossible odds before and they had survived. This mission would be no different. Inside the cockpit, Kale reviewed the mission plan. The fleet's goal was to strike the stronghold and gather intelligence about the Vexari's new superweapon. The device was rumored to have the power to annihilate entire human colonies in moments, and its completion could mean disaster for the Terran defense fleet. Kale felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Every decision, every maneuver could save lives or end them. The fleet moved cautiously, using the shadows of the asteroid belt for cover. Kyle's fingers danced over the controls, adjusting speed and trajectory with practiced precision. The Vexari were vigilant, but humans had the advantage of unpredictability. Kale admired the human spirit that thrived in such moments, our ability to think, adapt, and survive when the odds seemed insurmountable. Suddenly, a patrol drone appeared, its energy sensors scanning the area. Kale held his breath. He activated the stealth modules on his fighter and drifted silently past, barely a shadow against the cold backdrop of space. Around him, the fleet followed suit, moving with silent coordination, a testament to human ingenuity and teamwork. Inside the stronghold's orbit, Kale noticed something unusual. A small shuttle, clearly not part of the main fleet, was moving erratically near the surface of the fortress. Its markings indicated it was human, not Vexari. Kale's curiosity piqued. He adjusted his course and intercepted the shuttle, scanning for life signs. There was a human aboard, a prisoner, battered and weak, but alive. Kale carefully docked with the shuttle and helped the prisoner into his fighter. The man's name was Aaron Vale, a former engineer from a captured colony. He had vital knowledge about the Vexari weapon, its construction and potential weaknesses. Kale felt a surge of determination. Protecting Aaron and bringing him back alive became a top priority. "Thank you," Aaron whispered, his voice hoarse. "I thought I would die in that shuttle." Kyle gave a small nod. "You're safe now, but we need your knowledge to save countless others. Can you guide us?" Aaron's eyes brightened slightly. Yes, I can." The mission became more dangerous as they approached the heart of the stronghold. Vexari drones and patrol ships swarmed, their weapons capable of cutting through the strongest human armor. Kale's fighter weaved through the barrage, firing with calculated precision. Every shot, every maneuver showcased human adaptability. They might not have had the largest fleet or the strongest technology, but humans had courage, creativity, and relentless determination. During the chaos, Kale received a transmission from Lyra. Her voice, calm yet anxious, carried through the comm system. "Kale, I heard about the Stronghold mission. Be careful, I don't want to lose you." Kale's chest tightened, but he smiled faintly. "I'll return, Lyra, I promise. Humanity survives, and so will I." The message ended, leaving Kale with renewed focus. He knew the mission was bigger than personal feelings, bigger than individual fear. The lives of countless humans, including those on Aurora Prime, depended on success. Inside the stronghold, Kale and Aaron worked together, navigating corridors and systems that twisted like a maze. The Vexari had designed the facility to confuse and trap intruders, but humans thrived on challenges. Kale admired Aaron's intelligence and resourcefulness, qualities that, when combined with human courage, made them formidable. They discovered the control room of the superweapon. The device was massive, its energy core pulsing with a dangerous light. Kale felt a chill run down his spine. One misstep here could destroy the entire facility, and perhaps the surrounding colonies. But Kale reminded himself of the human spirit, our ability to endure, think, and act when faced with impossible odds. Kale and Aaron began gathering data, downloading blueprints and identifying vulnerabilities. The process was tense, each second a potential threat. Alarms blared, and Vexari patrols converged on their location. Kale's mind raced, calculating the risks, planning every move with precision. As they prepared to leave, Kyle hesitated. He had the chance to strike the superweapon immediately, But doing so could trigger catastrophic consequences. Lives could be lost and innocent prisoners might die. Kale faced a moral choice, a test not just of skill but of character. He made the decision. Using ingenuity and the limited resources at hand, Kale devised a way to disable key systems without causing mass destruction. It was risky, but it showcased the best of humanity: cleverness, bravery, and a deep respect for life. The plan worked. The superweapon was compromised and its completion would be delayed indefinitely. Kale and Aaron escaped the stronghold amid a flurry of laser fire and explosions. The fleet provided cover, their coordination reflecting the strength of human teamwork. Every ship, every pilot, every human involved proved that even against overwhelming odds, courage and ingenuity could prevail. Back aboard the fleet station, Kyle reviewed the data Aaron had brought. The blueprints and intelligence would allow the Terran defense fleet to anticipate and counter future Vexari attacks. It was a victory, but Kale knew the war was far from over. The Vexari would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and strike again. Yet, amidst the chaos, Kale felt a quiet sense of pride. Humans had survived, adapted, and struck back. They had faced an empire and proven that courage, intelligence, and heart could overcome even the most advanced technology. Kyle allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of Aurora Prime, of Lyra, and of the countless humans depending on his actions. The war was not just about territory or power. It was about preserving life, hope, and the enduring spirit of humanity. That night, Kale stood in the observation deck, looking at the stars. The galaxy seemed endless, full of danger, mystery, and possibility. He felt a renewed determination. Whatever the Vexari planned next, humans would face it. They would survive, adapt, and fight. And he would continue to fight for Lyra, for Aurora Prime, and for the countless lives that depended on the courage of ordinary humans doing extraordinary things. As he drifted to sleep in the quiet hum of the fleet station, Kale whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning. Humans endure, humans survive, and I will return, no matter what it takes." The Vexari stronghold had fallen, but the war was far from over. The intelligence that Kale and Aaron had stolen revealed something shocking. The Vexari homeworld itself was the source of their fleet's endless power. Massive factories there built ships every day, and energy reactors fueled their weapons. If humans wanted true freedom, they had to strike at the heart of the empire. The Terran defense fleet gathered in the dark void between the stars. Hundreds of ships, large and small, floated in silence as commanders planned the greatest battle of their lives. Around holographic tables, leaders from many human colonies debated strategies, their voices firm but nervous. Everyone knew the risks. The Vexari homeworld was defended by layers of fleets, fortresses, and weapons. Kyle Arden stood among the commanders, his presence respected after countless victories. His reputation as the human phantom had spread far across the colonies. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a symbol of hope. "The Vexari will not expect us to strike their core," Kyle said, his eyes fixed on the glowing hologram of the enemy planet. "They believe we are too weak, too scattered. That is their mistake. We must prove to them what humans can do when pushed to the edge." Some commanders frowned. "Their fleets outnumber us 10 to 1. Their technology is older, stronger. We could be wiped out before reaching orbit." Kale shook his head. "We are not stronger, but we are smarter. We will use their arrogance against them. We strike fast, hit their weak points, and turn their own systems into traps." There was silence and then slow nods. Humanity had always survived not because of numbers, but because of courage, cunning, and unity. When the fleet finally approached the Vexari homeworld, the sight was breathtaking. The planet glowed with a cold light, its surface covered in towers, factories, and war machines. Orbiting it were countless ships, shining like silver blades in the dark. The scale of the Empire's power was overwhelming, yet Kale felt no fear. His heart burned with determination. The first clash came quickly. Vexari fleets poured toward the humans, their weapons blazing. The void lit up with explosions as fighters weaved and dived. Kale's fighter shot forward, his hands moving instinctively on the controls. He darted between beams of light, firing bursts of plasma that struck enemy engines. His squadron followed his lead, moving like shadows through the chaos. "Remember," Kale's voice carried through the comms, "we fight smart. Don't meet their strength with strength. Outthink them. Human ships split into smaller groups, feigning retreats, then ambushing the Vexari from hidden angles. They hacked into enemy systems, sending false signals that caused Vexari ships to collide. Some pilots lured enemy squadrons into asteroid fields, where human knowledge of terrain gave them the advantage. The Vexari grew confused. They had expected a straightforward battle, but the humans fought like no enemy they had ever seen. Every maneuver, every sea. The war was finally over. The Terran defense fleet returned through the silent lanes of space, their ships battered but victorious. Songs of celebration echoed across every human colony. For the first time in decades, people could breathe without fear of Vexari fleets burning their skies. Among those ships was Kale Arden. His fighter carried scars of battle. Its hull blackened by fire, but inside, Kale's heart carried something heavier. He had survived when so many had not. He had fought an empire, toppled its stronghold, and won freedom for his people. Yet in the quiet moments, only one thought filled his mind: Lyra. Every day during the long journey home, Kale imagined her smile. He remembered her promise to wait, the way she had placed her hand on his before he left for war. That memory had carried him through the darkest nights, through battles that seemed impossible. She had been his anchor. Now, at last, he was coming home. Aurora Prime shimmered in the distance as his ship approached. The planet looked peaceful, covered in green valleys and glowing cities. Kale's chest tightened with emotion. He had dreamed of this moment for so long. The fleet descended into the atmosphere, greeted by crowds of cheering civilians. Fireworks lit up the sky, and banners stretched across the streets. Humanity hailed them as heroes. Children waved flags, and families cried with joy as soldiers stepped off the ships. Kale moved through the crowd quietly, his eyes searching only for one face. He ignored the cheers, the handshakes, even the medals handed to him. None of it mattered. All he wanted was to see her again. He reached the capital's garden where he and Lyra had once shared long evenings together before the war. His steps quickened. His heart pounded. And then, he saw her. Lyra stood beneath the great silver tree, her golden hair catching the sunlight. For a moment, Kale's heart leapt. She was there waiting just as he had imagined, but then, he froze. She was not alone. Beside her stood another man, his arm around her shoulders. They looked at each other with tenderness, their smiles soft, their bond clear. On her hand, a ring glistened in the light. Kyle's world shattered. He stood motionless, unable to breathe, unable to speak. All the battles, all the sacrifices, all the nights he had whispered her name under the stars. They came crashing down around him. Lyra turned, her eyes widening as she saw him. For a brief second there was shock, sorrow, and something like guilt in her expression. She stepped forward. "Kale," she whispered. His name on her lips was both a gift and a blade. The man beside her looked at Kale with calm respect. He did not speak, but the truth was clear. Lyra had moved on. She had married another. Kale's chest ached as though struck by a weapon. He wanted to rage, to demand why, but no words came. His throat felt locked. "I thought you were gone forever," Lyra said softly, tears gathering in her eyes. "When the war dragged on year after year, when messages stopped coming, we were told many of you had fallen. I waited, Kale. I waited as long as I could, but life..." It moved forward. Her words cut deep, but Kale could not hate her. He could see the pain in her eyes, the way her hand trembled. She had loved him once. She had not forgotten him. But she had chosen another path when hope had died. Kale forced himself to breathe. "I see," he said, his voice low and steady. "I fought an empire for you. And when I came back, you had found someone else." The man beside her bowed his head. "Kale Arden, the hero of humanity. I owe you my life, as do we all. Please know, I will honor her as you would have." Kale wanted to hate him, but he couldn't. The man's words carried no arrogance, no insult, only sincerity. Lyra's eyes glistened. "You were my heart, Kale, and part of me will always carry you. But I cannot undo the years. I cannot change what has already been written." Kale turned his gaze to the horizon. The city sparkled with celebration, but he felt nothing. The victory he had dreamed of was empty now. The war was won, but the future he had fought for was gone. That night, Kyle sat alone on a balcony overlooking Aurora Prime. The stars stretched across the sky, silent and endless. The sounds of laughter and music drifted up from below, but they did not touch him. Aaron Vale joined him quietly. The older strategist placed a hand on Kale's shoulder. I heard, he said gently. Kale said nothing. Aaron sighed. You gave everything, Kyle, not just for her, but for all of us. Do not let this wound destroy you. Humanity still needs men like you. The war may be over, but peace is fragile. There will be rebuilding. There will be challenges. You can still shape the future. Kale finally spoke, his voice heavy. I fought for her. Through every battle, it was her face that kept me alive, and now, I don't know who I am without that. Aaron's eyes softened. You are Kale Arden, the man who fought an empire and returned. The man who showed the stars what it means to be human. She was your reason once, but now perhaps you must find a new one. Kale looked back at the sky. He thought of the friends who had fallen. Rena, Talos, the brave pilots, the soldiers who had followed him into fire. He thought of the children in the streets, laughing without fear. He thought of the future, fragile but alive. Maybe Aaron was right. Maybe his reason to fight had to change. The next day, Kale stood before the Council of Colonies. The hall was filled with leaders, scholars, and citizens. They offered him medals, titles, even power. But Kale shook his head. I did not fight for power, he told them. I fought because humanity deserved to live free. If we are to honor the fallen, let it not be with statues or crowns, but with unity. Let us rebuild together so no empire can ever chain us again. The hall erupted with applause. People rose to their feet, their eyes shining with admiration. Kale Arden had lost the love of his life, but he had gained something else. He had become the heart of humanity itself. That evening, Kyle walked once more through the garden. Lyra was there again, but she did not approach. She only watched from a distance, her eyes full of unspoken words. Kale gave her a faint nod, not of bitterness, but of farewell. She returned the nod, and in that quiet moment both of them understood. Their story had ended, but life moved forward. Kale turned his gaze to the stars. They were no longer a battlefield. They were a promise, a place of new beginnings. And though his heart ached, Kyle felt a new fire within him. The war had taken much from him, but it had not taken everything. He was still human. He was still alive. And humanity's future was just beginning. Kyle Arden had seen many battles, but none like the one within his heart. The war was over, the empire defeated, yet peace felt strange to him. The silence of the skies, the absence of alarms and desperate calls, it was almost unsettling. For so long, his life had been one fight after another. Now there was only quiet. And in that quiet, his loss echoed the loudest. Lyra was gone, not in death, but in life. She had chosen another, and Kale could not change it. He had carried her memory across 1,000 stars, had fought for her face in the darkest hours. But now he had to carry something else, something greater. Humanity. Weeks passed. Across Aurora Prime and the other colonies, celebrations slowly turned into rebuilding. Cities once damaged by raids were repaired. Families long separated were reunited. And fields once burned grew green again. Kale did not vanish into the shadows, though his heart longed for solitude. Instead, he worked beside farmers repairing irrigation lines, beside engineers patching power grids, and beside children planting new trees in ruined parks. Wherever he went, people recognized him. At first, they whispered, awed by his presence. Then they greeted him, smiling, and slowly they spoke to him, not as a legend, not as a commander, but as one of them. He listened to their stories. A miner who had lost 3 brothers in the war, a young girl who had never seen the stars without the shadow of enemy ships, a mother who wept because her child could sleep in peace at last. Kale realized something then. He was not fighting for Lyra anymore. He was fighting for all of them. One evening, Aaron Vale approached him. The older strategist had grown thin and pale from years of sleepless planning. But his eyes still carried wisdom. You've become something more than a soldier. Kale, Aaron said as they walked through a half-rebuilt city. The people see you as their shield, their proof that humans can endure anything. Kyle shook his head. I am no shield. I only survived when others didn't, that's all. Aaron smiled faintly. No, Kyle, you gave them more than survival. You gave them belief. Empires rise and fall, but belief can shape the stars themselves. Kale fell silent. Those words stayed with him. Months turned into a year. Humanity grew stronger. Trade routes reopened, new ships were built, and the colonies joined hands more closely than ever before. For the first time, humans were not fractured by distance or fear. They stood united, but unity was fragile. With the Vexari Empire broken, other species watched humans carefully. Some were curious, some were wary, and some Kale knew would be hostile. The Council of Colonies summoned Kale often, asking for his guidance. They wanted him to lead the new fleet, to become the supreme commander of all human defense. He refused the titles, but he accepted one task: to prepare humanity for the future. The war showed us our strength, Kale told the Council. But peace will test us even more. We must not become arrogant. We must not forget who we are. We fight not to conquer, but to survive, to grow, to explore. The Council agreed, and so Kale began shaping a new kind of fleet. Not one built for endless war, but for protection, discovery, and